All right. Thanks everyone for still being here. I'm sorry if there wasn't lunch and you're hungry. More people came than we're supposed to, but we're happy to have everyone here. Thanks again to all the speakers and sponsors. Huge thank you. Yeah, really could have done without you. And thanks to the speakers again, the ones here and all of them. Yeah, big round of applause again. So we're having like just a networky thing at the UCT pub. There's like a minimal bar tab, but yeah, it's not too big. There aren't that many people here though, so we might be able to get down. But that's sort of the main road where the big shiny steps are. As you come up UCT from town, the sports center's on the left. It's at the sports center. So yeah, it's cozy, it's cool. It's next to the rugby field, basically. Okay. But just follow the people. Follow the nerds with the t-shirt. Yeah. Okay, so we are about to start the panel discussion while I alt-tab my way to my notes. So, all right. Yes. Much better. Thank you. Okay, so the mission of the Deep Learning Indaba is to strengthen machine learning in Africa. And so I want that to be the central topic. I think it's broad enough to really be whatever you want it to be. But I'd like to start maybe, if everyone could just throw out one idea of how, like the sort of the lowest hanging fruit, how they think we can strengthen machine learning in Africa. Sort of just 1 or 2 sentence thoughts on the topic. We don't have a microphone, so you can't pass anything like a baton. Maybe we could just go. Ismail, would you like to?
Yeah, thank you. First thing that pops to mind is I'm lucky I get first place. Is of course educational programs, and IBM was part of this national TTP national program in e-science training and something. It's a university consortium of a few universities, BITS, University of Congo. It's actually the more traditionally not serviced universities that form this consortium besides BITS. And they've formed a syllabus for a master's program. What's cool about it is it's both a MSc and an MA in data science, 2 separate streams. So they're reaching out to a broader spectrum of people to bring tools of data science for everyone to use. So just like how computers are used by all fields, including sociologists, psychologists, we need to take the tools of AI to all fields. So that's one thing that pops to mind. More structured programs like masters.
So I'm stealing my answer from some discussions I just had. I think the South African undergraduate programs are amazing in equipping people, whether you do CS, EE, applied maths, stats, physics. I think it equips you with the basics of doing machine learning, and then if you couple that with this type of master's program, that's great. I think it will, flow on. I think the one problem that I guess is a South African problem is just to get people from grade 11 and 12 interested in actually doing an undergrad in one of these mathematical fields to equip them. So I don't know what the answer is, but I think you need to actually start in grade 11 and 12, maybe not by forcing machine learning on them, but actually showing them some of the exciting applications that you can do and seeing it as a career path.
I think one great way to get this applied for real challenging problems would be for the practitioner to visit those who need and will use it to gather empathy. Let's go to the townships or go to the taxi ranks maybe, talk to the people, gather empathy, and that kind of generates many more ideas, because ideas can come from anywhere. So, and the more ideas that come, the more well understood the problem gets, and that kind of helps in designing these black boxes which we call human.
Well, I think that days like this is great. Many people are doing different things on their own or in small groups, and we don't always know what other people are doing, and getting together and telling other people what you're doing, and in that way we can learn from one another and build a community, and then as a community get more people involved.
I think we need more local data sets. We've got unique faces, unique languages, unique geographics. We've got unique lack of connectivity, and that's a problem. And I think I don't think we've got facial recognition for Africans. Do we? Do we have a data set? Do we have a? I think we need a table for Africa.
There's actually one being established.
Yeah.
No, I fully agree. The reason I founded MIA, Machine Intelligence Institute of Africa, was also to network together people that's interested, data scientists, AI, anybody interested to use these smart technologies to solve problems and to help transform Africa as well. And I'm so inspired by deep learning in last year's event. It's South Africans, it sits in deep learning, deep mind and Google brain that was really behind that and pulled the muscle. And that event was awesome. And at the back of that event, MIA also had an IBM hackathon where we've got 100 people, close to 100 people, and well, these guys, Alex and Chris, was fantastic in terms of that. And that was exciting. We actually had a lot of really good diversity there as well. So, which is really awesome. But I think one needs to think big here. We don't want to get left behind. So we need to think about, we've got new government leadership and so forth. I know Cyril Ramaphosa talked about the fourth industrial revolution and those type of things. So I think we need to get government, local governments involved. It needs to be like a national strategy. If you think about what's happening in China, what's happening in France, what's happening in many places, Canada and so forth, they're thinking big. They realize what's going on. And I think we need to get this into school curriculums. My son is here, we need to get it to the kids. He's 15 years old. He's doing Python and Keras and all that kind of stuff, and he's excited by this, and he's doing AIbased. He can do that, he does computer science, so why can't we get those kind of people involved? We shouldn't just, we should maybe think about expectations, constraints. We should just say, let's remove it. And anyway, so there's a few other things that I've got listed here. I just wanted to say, we actually, in terms of strengthening, today we had a guy, Bayu, you met him, Akadami here. He's actually the Chief Transformation Officer of EndtoEnd in Nigeria, and he head up the data science Nigeria, and he's really behind that. And we are also collaborating with him. But I'm quite inspired by what he's doing in Nigeria, and we can follow his lead. He's building a closed-loop ecosystem around that, basically taking people from having no knowledge right through to being on boot camps, getting interns, getting jobs, mentoring, all of that, and it's very inspiring. And we need those kind of leadership. So I think AIMS, MIA, all these, we need to work together to establish the same kind of thing. Sorry.
Great, all really great answers. They're all longer than 2 sentences. We're all very good answers.
I think
Yeah.
we have time.
No, we have more time. In fact, we can go until 7:30. If people want to leave, please don't feel like you're being rude. Yeah.
I just want to mention one thing. Because it maybe fits in with this question. NASPERS is doing something exciting, and it's great to see that. They talk about NASPERS labs, and they talk about 1,000 labs across the country positioned in rural areas as well. And they talk about AI-based learning. And we eventually, I think Dr. Jacques Ludik involved also with AI-based learning, but forget about that. NASFAR is putting money behind this, and it's all kind of a social, non-profit course, which is, for me, fantastic. It's great that corporates in South Africa is taking that leadership. So if we look at other corporates, why can't we use money in a proper way to actually do that? Because that is a great initiative.
Great, yeah, I mean, I totally agree on all of the above, especially the open data sets. I urge anyone from companies to consider releasing data sets as challenges. I think that's, I mean, there's this great talk by Peter Golding, the director of research at Google, called Unreasonable Effectiveness of Big Data. And he just shows that like more data is always better than a better algorithm. You know, like a simple algorithm with lots of data can do very, very well. And also the connectivity thing's a problem because even though there are free Stanford courses on deep learning on YouTube, if MTN's going to extort you on the data costs, then you know, I think a lot of that's cartel pricing and it costs us bringing that down. But I think that'll also be a big lever. But yeah, the data sets. If you could please get some data sets published, that would be great. And I think also it's important to like share them all in one place because right now they're all over the place. There's some interesting blockchain stuff on open data, but it's a bit frustrating if you have to like find some janky FTP server. Like we get to have these all in one place, especially around Africa. So we can maybe use some of the resources around the deep learning data to create a centralized, at least a listing, if not a repository. Okay, cool. So sort of Twitter-sized answer to your favorite example of before they extended the limit, your favorite example of applied artificial intelligence in Africa. I mean, you can elaborate a little bit, but just like a short favorite example. I mean, maybe the first one who has one can say, because I see people thinking very hard. Hopefully, you know how to make it concise. Any ideas on your favorite example of applied artificial intelligence, machine learning in Africa?
I have one here.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think you smell that shotgun. Yes.
Excuse me for taking one from our lab, but we were searching the genome for correlations between genes and cancer metastasis, so the spread of cancer, correlated genes in certain complicated ways. And there was a very African one that was found, which links the spread of cancer to malaria resistance. So that was a sad thing, that having malaria resistance leads to slightly higher chance of certain cancers. But it does show, it raises the point that you have to ask these questions, which are very locally sensitive, contextual, they're very contextual. So that's why, another plug, IBM picked to put a research lab in Africa, because we want to ask these questions and with this knowledge, empower ourselves with knowledge to tackle the problem.
I guess also, very quick, John Quinn has a project. He's working with UN Pulse in Makerere, also with Thomas Niesler, and they're building speech systems to basically monitor radio broadcasts in Uganda for things like figuring out when a disaster happens, how it spreads over the country. He's actually got a whole bunch of super interesting applications, specifically in Uganda. Uganda's got a big traffic problem, and like building practical systems for just tracking traffic. There's a whole bunch of very interesting things coming from there.
There was some work on how can we use low-cost sensor to detect counterfeit drugs in the rural level.
Is that an actual application?
Yeah.
Wow.
Can you give one sentence more?
What country?
So counterfeit drug is a big problem, we all know. And if you want to test if certain drug is genuine or counterfeit, you have to send it for NMR analysis. And the easier way can be to take a very low cost ACT spectroscope. But instead of trying to recognize the molecules, try to match the spectroscope with the spectroscopic image of the real drug. And we have got a short YouTube video on how that can work. You just
Maybe.
search in YouTube on counterfeit drugs.
You're going to be on a list if you do that. Just a warning.
That's true.
Yeah.
I think my favorite one, but I'm not sure it's AI, but that the body scanner that I think it was developed here at UCT, where it was developed for diamond detecting stolen diamonds, but then it developed into a medical application. Where if you are in an accident, then they can scan your whole body immediately
Sure.
at the ER.
Like Star Trek.
Something like that. And it was in Grey's Anatomy.
Oh, cool.
Why saw it now?
Yeah, after fire.
Okay. Yeah, so, cheers, Don. Okay, so quick. So, favorite, I actually talked about this after the conference. I've listed a bunch of them. It's in the talks on the MIA events page as well. My favorites are really the healthcare ones. I love healthcare applications, so I've got them listed there, but the one I'm going to quickly reference here is because that's the one I've been involved in Africa, is with JUMO, where we looked at building a next generation mobile money marketplace. And it was providing people with no access to capital, no money to, say, in emergency situations. I need to send my kid to hospital, or it's an entrepreneur that sits here, I need stock, I can't go further, to actually facilitate that by feature phones, make it available. And that's what JUMO is doing across Tanzania, Uganda, all those kind of countries. And at JUMO, I was the Vice President of Data Science and Chief Data Officer, so we put up the whole data intelligence organization and mined the mobile network operator data to do that. Pull direct records for wallet behavior, and create end-to-end solutions around that. And that's fascinating. There's so much to do in that space. So that's something.
Okay, great. Yes?
Can I just add one thing that I don't think many people know? It's not a unique South African one, but it was in collaboration. So I don't know if you know Google Voice Search.
Yes.
Yeah.
So after UK English, US English, and Indian English, South African English, isiZulu, and Afrikaans were the next voice search languages to be released. And
They're all released.
yeah, they are released, but that was already in 2010. And we collected all the data for them and built all the pronunciation dictionaries while I was still working at the CSIR.
Huh.
So I think that's also something that we can be very proud of.
And is that data publicly available?
No. That was
And you would not be proud of it.
At least it's a service for us.
So we were actually in competition with Dutch.
Oh, really?
And we just made it to be the first, Afrikaans and isiZulu to be the first non-English languages to be released on voice search.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay, so maybe you can just, whoever has an answer can answer first, and then we can just go from there. If you were given sort of a decent sized budget and say 10 research students, and you could work on whatever you want to strengthen machine learning in Africa, and you have, say, you benchmarked on a 2-year horizon or a 5-year horizon. I think that the shorter horizon is more interesting. Like what do you see as the low-hanging fruit where you could really add value in Africa?
I still think data sets. I will go mad. I will, in terms of text, speech, and then images.
Can you elaborate? So how would you just blow it all on Mechanical Turk? Like how how do you get there?
Not so much the labeling, but like for example, facial recognition. I think that's something that's really lacking in the African context. I think text resources, for example, educational resources for all 11 African, or all 11 South African languages, to create the resources, because it doesn't exist. I think that's a big thing, is that those data resources does not exist in on the same scale than international resources.
Yeah, it seems like there might be some sort of mechanism by which you can capture that data as a byproduct of something that's already happening. Like, maybe you can get call centers that are made available from government call centers, and then kind of say, there might be, yeah.
Well, what? So unlimited budget? US dollars? I would really focus on, similar to what we do with Portage Logic, I would focus on end-to-end solutions that's actually making an impact. You've got to have data. You've got to have, if you don't have the data, you put the infrastructure in place. So the way I'm looking at this is that you need a rock-solid data infrastructure. And you can have beautiful infrastructure, but there's no data, structured, unstructured, you can do nothing. So that's absolutely critical. So connectivity is critical. It's, so in our solutions, we actually look at a whole ecosystem of partners that can help put end-to-end solutions together. Obviously, we can't do everything, but we want to fill in the gaps and make sure that we can embed an AI engine there to actually create this end-to-end solution. So I would dedicate a team on those type of things. And healthcare, education, think about the big picture things, big ticket items for Africa as well. So you want to start solving those.
You should solve real world problems rather than train people with textbook examples. Get a real problem and implement whatever is necessary in there, and in the process people will learn, and then you can have more people coming in, these people can train those, rather than just textbook examples, and then when they get to real problems they still don't know.
Yeah. Your course was good at that.
I think one of the low-hanging fruits that is out there is remote sensing. There's so many problems in Africa that can be solved to some extent by remote sensing. And the good thing is that the data is out there, just a little bit costly, because Africa as a continent doesn't have any proper satellites to buy the data. But we can always strike a deal, and with proper remote sensing data, we can sort out land holding problems, land use problems, security problems, then things like predicting the yield of different agricultural things, and protecting the coast, because there is a big high-risk problem, especially from the Chinese ships coming to the African coast, catching the fish and going back. The big problem in the small islands like the Union Island and Mauritius. Those things can quite easily be solved within a 2 years horizon, and a decent sized budget for students and them.
I won't answer your question. I think I'll just throw something else in. I think it's very important to think of machine learning, right, and to develop models and to make them better. But if I had a pot of money like that, I would also say it's really important to focus on specific domain issues. I think just doing general machine learning, it's good. You need to understand the model, but at the same time, I think we need focused efforts on specific problems. So if I had money like that, then I would focus obviously on my research, and I would focus on that specific thing. But if you take education as an example, right? Say we had 10 million rand to do education, then I would start a lab with machine learning experts, but also people from the educational domain in that same lab to really bridge things, because I think machine learning can actually give us insights into the domain, and the domain can also tell us how to build better structure into our machine learning models. I think your example is also an example of that, like picking one thing and drawing in expertise from all over the country that's focusing on that specific problem.
What threw me off was the low-hanging fruit part, because that was a good answer. I like how you phrased it, that it's doable, and so I haven't got an answer for the low-hanging fruit part, but if I would pick topics that need attention, well, first I'll pick a topic that needs attention. AI and ethics. A lot more work needs to be put into techniques for taking data sets and removing discriminatory bias. So if you look at, unfortunately we don't have this problem yet in South Africa, but like in the US, they use AI to decide on prison sentences. And there's some horror stories there that they show that these systems, they're learning from data. But of course the data is biased, right? And biased in a way that we would, first of all, it shows what an unequal society we live in. But it doesn't mean you should act on that. Just because there's a correlation between someone's race and the prison sentence doesn't mean now you use that as a feature to predict. So it's a really serious issue. And
although, I mean, have you seen? Did you read that Danny Kahneman Thinking Fast and Slow book?
Yeah, very good.
There's this bit on how pretty much linearly with the amount of time since the age, the parole rates like decline. The like parole granting rates. So like if you're up for parole, you want to go straight after lunch, basically, because like as it gets hungry, so maybe there's a counter argument that humans have these built-in biases, so then maybe a model, but then it's like which one's least biased, and then the model may be less biased, but now you're deciding, like the self-driving car may kill fewer people, but now the onus or the blame is on them, whereas individual.
No, I'm not saying AI is bad. I'm saying we just need to research techniques. In fact, at the IBM Think conference last week or week before, they picked this particular topic as one of the biggest contributions. In fact, they made this prediction that if AI doesn't solve this problem, the AIs that don't solve this problem will die out. They won't be used. And they give an example of one where you take a data solution and pick sensitive variables that you want to unlearn the correlations from. And you can use Corbett-Leibler divergence and remove the bias. So there are techniques. So yes, AI is better than humans in some situations. So by all means, let's use AI, but then be cognizant of these problems and then research them and solve them. So that's I think the algorithm that was presented at this conference is doable, and we're just not doing it. We're just not interested in it enough. And we as Africans, we should really be pushing it. We know our local environment. We should be going after data and then being aware of these issues. And we have the Feed the Small movement. We're really tackling with these issues. So we should be at the forefront. And then if I had to pick one topic that's not, that's definitely not low-hanging fruit, I'd pick quantum machine learning.
That could be low-hanging and high-hanging at the same time.
And what I did say in my talk was this could really bring a spin to the machine learning side of things. To AI, it could be the one thing that makes AI, solve beyond the parts of the super AI stuff. But I didn't get into it.
Yeah, so like you say that because computing would increase and would mean that our models would be better. I mean, if I were to briefly answer the question, I'd say like, firstly, if you rank the biggest impact, I think you can get like very intro, like undergrad software engineers, and they'll probably have a much better impact than like math people. Because math people typically don't know how to use GitHub, they don't know how to use real programming languages, and looking at like, are you joking? So, no offense, just kidding. Take offense, learn Python. You'll thank me later. It's alright. Peter's gonna hate while I use this stupid brackets around their loops and stuff. Okay, next question. R or Python?
Python.
Yes.
Python, sure.
Myself, Python.
What's the best?
For practical
Probably.
I don't want to.
I think
It's also Python. I want to say C or something cool like that.
Yeah.
I read this blog recently actually that said okay, all the strengths of Python combined with Lisp actually. So there's a new language called Lisp, which is Python in Lisp form. But that same another article made the point that as languages mature, they are becoming more and more functional. So I like functional programming. It's nice to see that these features that were there like 20 years ago are now entering the mainstream in Python. Yeah. So Python Lisp.
Alex,
Okay.
There was a question.
Yes.
so on the topic of gatekeeping,
Yes.
what I was wondering is, so earlier in the talk of building capacity and especially developing interest in young people who are machine learning.
Yeah.
And so I want to ask the panelists, how do we ensure that the groups of students that we're encouraging to get into this field are representative of South Africa? Right, so
Yeah.
we have a 15-year-old who's already learning Keras, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
But how do we make sure that that acceleration is somehow distributed?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm going to put this to the panel.
Can you just repeat the
Yes, I
questions?
will. So let's just wait for. Cool. Let's just. He's trying to sneak back in, not knowing the waiting for him. Okay, so please correct me if I'm rephrasing this incorrectly, but my understanding of the question is essentially asking how can we make sure that as we spread machine learning in Africa, we make sure that it's spread in a sort of important, like stratified sampling way, so it's representative of the populations. Which means if you look around at the team page of most of these like machine learning companies, it looks like you're in Europe, right? Not Africa. So how do you make sure that the spreading news spreads in line with the demographics and the population and the realities of Africa? I'm going to start calling you up.
I think the two issues there. One is the general education issue, that's the Christmas Hall point. That looks like Europe issue is across all fields. And that's Christmas Hall is one victory of free education going forward. Hence the 15% event. So that needs to be tackled. But I think from an AI point of view, the bigger problem is that even once we educate more people and so on, AI takes jobs. So we need to solve that problem. How do you create jobs? How do you protect jobs? But then without stifling innovation? So it's a really difficult issue. IBM normally takes the position that we believe in AI augmenting humans. So that's kind of positive spin on it. I don't know if they don't mention that that augmentation still puts people out of jobs, but this is something that really needs to be solved. And it's been with us, since the other revolutions as well, industrial revolution, computer revolution. People often say no, jobs are created elsewhere, but there's still this very painful period that just bulldoze through, and we don't stop to think about the effects in society. More work needs to be put into that.
Any other? You don't want to answer unless you want to. So any other brief comments?
I just want to quickly comment on that. I think, well, my personal message from a person now, I'll shape the future of the smart technology era, and I really think we are in a situation where we need to be, because of the exponential growth and what's happening, the speed of change, we need to be a lot more deliberate and work together as a society to solve these kind of problems, because we can't have a transition period here. It's not like we don't have enough time. So we need to be more proactive in solving it. And I think a lot of the solutions should be around, like what IBM is doing, this should be augmentation. patient, if you think about a doctor, or how do you work with the tools? Do you create roles around this and focus more on empathy, dealing with humans, and make that valuable? Teaching should be valuable, should be paid, should have more. And we should think differently about so many different roles. And then, yeah, so it's a big problem that needs to be solved. Diversity, it's education, as you said, we make education free. We need to think aggressively about this. Connectivity everywhere. We need to invest in the right things. Infrastructure. Trump is trying to invest in infrastructure and also these, but we need to think about, yeah, it's right, yeah, I know. But for Africa, we don't want to be left behind here. I'm concerned about that as Africa, we can be left behind and competing with other big countries that's putting incredible amounts of money behind this. So,
I think I'll touch upon two very pragmatic ways of answering this query. First thing is that sometimes as a hobby I go to the township schools to teach kids science and math to inspire them. Kids in 6th and 8th grade can divide 4 by 2. How do you expect them to go and learn machine learning? It's all very nice to tell them things, but primary education in this country is offshore. Second pragmatic way of looking at this thing, okay, let us forget primary education, focus only on university. I'm from electrical engineering. All the non-white students get a very good job offer from things like ESCOM. And that's why the white students are forced to think to start up their own business. And that is why what you told, you look at these startups dealing with machine learning, they look like European countries. So it is not by design. So, okay, how do you solve it? Do you stop giving jobs to the non-white students? No.
Interesting. Yeah, I'll mention there's a startup called Siyabulan. I don't know what they're up to these days, but I was trying to Mark a while ago, and they kind of have this knowledge graph of the full school syllabus. I think there's interesting stuff there around like the student can ask questions, and then we can construct a representation of what they understand, and then fill in the gaps in a sort of automated way, I think. And then you could localize it to the language. I think there's a lot of interesting stuff that could be done there.
Using machine learning?
Yeah, exactly. Yes, exactly.
That contributes maybe towards.
Please do, yes, okay. Help us.
I think.
You were supposed to be on the panel.
So bring a chair.
No, that's fine. I think looking at my journey, my exposure to, I did artificial intelligence at university, and at that level, it was maybe the way they taught it was just over my head at that time. But then I did an internship soon after my undergrad, and that sparked a huge interest. And
yes.
From there, I fell in love with machine learning. So I think internship opportunities are very great just for exposure, and then maybe then we'll see an increase, because I think there is truth to that. A lot of students, maybe not, but a lot of black students after undergrad, they tend to then go work in industry and move away from furthering their studies. But I think if we can spark that interest and the potential in artificial intelligence and see how we can then start changing their mindset into becoming designers and problem solvers. So I think we'll then get a lot of students going into furthering their studies and then joining machine learning companies and so.
So you got that from an internship. I guess the one question is, can we change the way we teach machine learning in an undergrad or a postgrad level to actually spark that interest? Because I agree with you. I think I've sat in 2 types of machine learning courses. The one where it's very mathy and I'm dying and I don't understand what's going on. Okay, and the other one where it's super applied, where it's just like I'm doing the sklearn tutorial, right? And just training a bunch of stuff, which is exciting. But the right thing is something in the middle, and then the ideal thing is to do exactly what happened to you, like to spark that interest in some way.
I'll say that what I mentioned earlier on, like having the biggest impact, just get some software engineers who know how to code repos. I think there's a huge gap between companies' ability to find talent, and so I think companies could benefit hugely by offering internships, and that could of course fund education. So I think someone just needs to sort of middleman that relationship. I would suggest everyone in the audience who has a company, like please email like maybe us or the Indaba thing, and we can definitely announce those internships and get people filled on those. I'll also, it's easy into my next question. I see some people want to ask questions. We'll do questions and comments from the audience shortly. I wonder if we can bring something up and then maybe you can incorporate this in your answers. We can go to questions from the audience. I'm okay to run over a bit. Are you guys, anyone has to be good 7?
Yes.
Okay, cool. We can continue with our we'll try to get through the questions that we have to ask now. So I'll just bring up this one thing and maybe you can address some of what we've been discussing and we'll get to your question. So I just want to bring up, BCX is not a sponsor. I understand some people from BCX are here, but I don't know if you saw an announcement like a couple months ago, BCX investing 50 million rand in the Data Science Academy. So they're training 300 interns over the next 3 years, sort of future-proof executives and try to bring some of those skills into industry, into South Africa, and especially into African hands. Any thoughts on that, or if you were to be able to set up an internship program, what would you make it look like? Or what are your thoughts on these topics in general? How to strengthen machine learning in Africa being the theme we need to think about. Yes.
I don't know if you know about the CSR design program.
Mm-hmm.
So CSR is sponsored by Science and Technology, has got a vacation program. So they take final year and then honors, masters and PhD. But it's so it's a vacation program. But then what they do is they have these project teams. So it's say 2 to 3 students working on a real problem for 3 weeks, and they've got a mentor. But it's so multidisciplinary. So they have, for example, a journalist a student, they've got a graphical design student, and then of course the engineering, statistics, etc. And then they present, and they've got a show and tell at the end of the vacation program. And I think that makes a whole, I think it's the same exposure that you had. And the nice thing about it is, because I think it's difficult to clone an internship experience in a degree. Because it's got different objectives. Students want to pass, they want to, it's something that they want to finish. If you are in an internship, your KPIs are completely different. And that design program actually replicates an internship, but in a 3-week vacation space. And I think that's a good model.
Yeah, we just remember to get the link.
So the Pawsey is the leader.
Okay, cool. Yeah, well, I'm sure they're pushing it anyway. But that's great. Yeah, so maybe one thing to just add on to maybe think about is, like, why can't some homework assignments be like internship projects? Like, why are there all these, like, John goes to the shop to buy 5 bottles of milk? Why can't it be an actual project? Because also then you're doing the work which builds actual implementation in industry. Like, I think there should be more collaboration between, but maybe you can give your thoughts.
So the machine learning course I audited, the place I was before, it's a US university, they had a very open-ended project as part of their, they had a course on unsupervised learning. They had a very, very open project. It was very open-ended, and they hosted it on Kaggle. So you can create private Kaggle competitions. And basically these guys would fail all their other courses because they'll be competing against each other on the Kaggle boards. And that was, people got into that a lot. And I think that was an awesome way to kind of replicate that.
Yeah.
Maybe it got a bit unhealthy, but I thought it was.
Well, I'll just say, one of our gracious sponsors, the guys from the Launch Lab, run a bunch of competitions, and my startup won some of those, and it was very motivating. The competition is always a good motivator, and yeah, that's great. I think there should also be more hackathons at universities. Like I helped organize that year one, but that should be like a monthly club, and you can pull projects from industry. They can sponsor the prizes. Everyone learns. I also think computing should be free. Like students currently can't learn because they can't afford the computing. It's like what? Like and also it's like that drug dealer model. The cloud service providers will have customers for life if they learn how to use this. Like I think they should also, every university student should be able to like do, like obviously they can't mine Bitcoin and stuff, but I think they should be able to learn. But the problem is they've got to pay for that, and students have no money. So yeah, maybe IBM can help sponsor.
Yeah. Well, I think it's sponsored.
They sponsored the
like
yeah.
the vision platform.
And also an internship, we're running a massive internship project, 10-year internship project. We hope to train hundreds of interns, and this is specifically an equity internship. And the model is you come in for 3 or 6 months while you're doing your master's or PhD, or in between even. And we also have an undergraduate sponsorship program. It's not an internship, it's a sponsorship. I want to make a point about I'm a fan of edX and Coursera as well. I feel like a kid in a candy store. I can just spend the whole day, weekends watching videos. But there was an interesting blog I came across that they did some analysis, and they showed that unfortunately it didn't play out the way the dream of MOOCs people expected it to play out, that it would democratize education. And what they showed is that like 90% of the people who took these courses had degrees already. Because, I mean, we already hooked. We already know the value of education, and now we got it for free, and so we dive in and take a Harvard course or MIT course, like the dream come true. But you had to go through that system first.
Yeah.
So that still hasn't been solved. So I'm tying that into the internship discussion. Somehow I feel this human element, this mentorship is crucial. Apprenticeship, maybe the whole apprenticeship model is a nice TED talk, one of the highest rated TED talks on school skill creativity, and how it's like a machine. It's like consumerist, factory line type way of education being treated like a factory line. And so we need to go back. So I see the apprenticeship and mentorship model as a cure for that. But then that leads to another problem, which is that mentors are in short supply, right? So somehow we need to solve that problem. How do we?
I will say though, it's like people just take note for it, like they want everything to come too easily. Honestly, man, I think if anyone took the effort to like email you, you may not reply straight away, but I think in most cases you would reply. But I think people also need to be proactive, and there are also a bunch of meetup groups. So like I help run the Cape Town Deep Learning meetup. There's the media stuff. There are a lot of people available. If you just say, hey, can I email you some questions? Most people are going to say yes. And you can cold email, like Stefan Klaus from IndabaX said, like he cold emailed Jan LeCun and made a copy or something. I think it's important to also reach out and be proactive and not just expect it to like happen.
Also, if you want that, you need to have the right attitude.
That itself is a skill.
Yeah.
So let's open up for some questions. Again, you can leave if you want. I reckon let's just run until like 7:10 until we run out of questions, and then you can go to the UCT Club and we'll have some drinks and so on. So I think you had a question first.
I just wanted to point out on the intern class, I don't know if it's still running, but the rules work incredibly well.
Yeah, it's also great. Is James Saunders still here? James may have left, but yeah, they helped start it, and he's also helping with the Cape Town Deep Learning meetup. But yeah, the Break Rules is also an incredible initiative. But these should all be in one place. It's like the data issue. Like maybe the data is there, we just don't know where it is. It would be good to have all these internships, all these initiatives in one place where people can find them. But Break the Rules, I mean, it is pretty well published, but I'm sure some people in the show don't know about it.
I guess that's, from what I remember, and being a while, it was largely computer science and not so much data science.
You say it like those are different things.
Computer science all through my life.
Okay, are you shipping it into production, or are you just writing like research code in R? For me, I don't know. Just kidding. Well, mainly because you can't can't put stuff in production in R because it's not a programming language really, it's a mathematical programming language.
It's not as fast as Python. You have to use 2 equals, you have to use 2.
It starts at 1, but okay, so next, Dean.
I started my career in vehicle traffic and pedestrian microsimulation, and shortly after that I left, purely because there's just no real data, just full of people fudging results and giving fancy 3D models that mean nothing to like governments, organizations, etc. And then you compare using exactly the same software I was, it's called PTV Vism, in Transport for London and the German transport system. There's so many resources of how they capture the data, how they use the data, so much application for machine learning, so much job opportunity for Africa to do.
What's your question?
Okay. It's like a collaborative. A collaboration is needed from the government in order to fulfill this, right? Now, how can we get
actually toy and protest for more data?
Yeah, we need groups like this to collaborate and to actually pressure government to not sit on the arse.
We're going to do it.
How are we doing that though? So that's the question.
We're setting up a session with Cyril Ramaphosa.
It's a follow-up on that one because it's actually with my point. A lot of time you can influence what's within your space. Okay, so you got maybe IBM can afford to have but for a lot, I'm from the perspective, we've got a small business. I've been training 50 people over the last couple of years in my particular field. But it's almost like a fool's errand, actually, as a small business to actually spend a lot of time training interns because the economic is not there. I mean, they gave an idea, you get a hit. And those type of things, there are no programs, it's just about actually consistency as an industry. Because that's sort of what we need to actually come. If the government wants to invest in it, it's available. A lot of people are willing to do that. A lot are willing to invest, willing to put in. Some people do it anyway, and but unless you got serious money behind it, that you can actually make it as a part of your planning process. Smaller businesses that can actually open a lot of mentors, they're not going to do it. It's just not viable. So it's almost like you have, if an industry wants to do it, use basically the academic contact, use the other thing to actually try and create a more consistent message. In some aspect, the insurance industry manager is to get their sector to work a little bit. Most of the other sectors are a total disaster in terms of the staff, and the staff is totally unpredictable. So it's actually not even useful for any business. If you give money, it's like a casino rather than something that you can actually use as an investment.
Yeah, so it might be incentives, like maybe if they get extra VE credits for interns or like agreeing on something. Maybe, do you have any thoughts on how we would do that?
From an academic point of view, I can say that we would love to have collaborations with small businesses to give us projects to give to our students because all we have is textbook examples and we want them, but because we don't have the practical problems to give to them. And I did an online course from the US last year, and many of those universities have a project as part of a data science degree, and I think that is very important.
It's I mean, the standard deep learning for text and computer vision courses both have that. And just looking through the past projects is a great thing to do. But yeah, I totally agree. Maybe the deep learning Indaba can sort of make a marketplace where companies say that these are what we need done, and academics can just match that market. That might be one approach. Any other questions from the floor? Yeah.
Sort of two questions, but that kind of both interrelate. The one is training is why can't we keep it as two separate things? Technology moves from research to application. Why don't we keep this as students doing applications and students doing theory, and get people who can actually apply AI in industry and keep roll that out and keep the theoretical side. The other question then is going back to the ethics and the data set. Everybody talks about the government opening up data sources and making data applicable to the public. Who actually benefits the most from that? Is it not big industry who now has this free data? Should we not do it the other way around, that any organization in Africa, which is collecting data, should make that data accessible to everybody else to use. That governments can use that data and that people get value from the data, not industry, not business. So I think it's continually exporting Africa and well, mine our data. Overseas business, not in IBM or whatever. IBM and Google. CSR creates data for Google, which is open data. I mean, that's to me it doesn't sound right that we sell it to Google when actually Google should be providing to us.
IBM.
Speaking for Google. Yeah, well, I mean, when it just brought a whole horror of thoughts in my mind about every time we form a collaboration, there's a ream of agreements that we have to sign, data agreements. It has to be sensitive because well, I mean, there's personal sensitive data as well that to be worried about, and then
why do you have the right to mine our information?
Yeah, exactly. These are some of the issues. How to anonymize the data, but there's costs involved. Of course, there's costs in collecting the data. It's an expensive process. That's why we have this. And you kindly offered this. Was it 10 million rand project?
Grants.
Yeah. So I think, in fact, I reckon that's why these big companies, including IBM, has realized that the cloud is so important because that's that's where the data is going to sit. Funny enough, IBM has a unique take on the cloud. Cloud data. We don't mine that data. We're selling this idea that your data is yours, and we do not benefit from it unrelated to you. I think we're the only company that makes that a strong position. But the point is, there's always cost involved. Hosting, collecting,
all the cost is
the value is in the data. The value is in the data. The value for products is in the data. So you're talking about a whole model of economics. Actually, you have to relook at the whole. You have to look at the whole new model of economics. If you want to
make other people.
I think, I don't know if you've taken a look at any cryptocurrency like blockchain projects, but there's some interesting stuff around like for example, if you read the Civic white paper, kind of almost proudly South African project, I guess, we've been working on it. Banks pay a ridiculous amount of money to fee the people. And so if you've already been fee kit, maybe Bank B can buy the fee kit from Bank A for less than they would pay and both win, right? But there's a lot of discussion in the paper around like being rewarded for revealing the data. So everyone's talk was talking about like how you may lower someone's premium if they volunteer data, right? I think it's conceivable that there may be a marketplace that could be made for your data where you can be rewarded for it rather than exploited. So there may be a technological solution to that specifically, but yeah, great point. Odins.
So to your point, it doesn't have to be like you have to read the data for everyone, or you have to reveal the model to everyone. So the concept which is coming now is like decentralized and democratized AI and data. What does that mean? Everyone contributes to the data, and everyone contributes to the model. So it's kind of on a part of blockchain, but you use the data in a form where you can only use a portion of it, and the rest of the information is still encrypted enough to not reveal anything. You train your model, and then or you give away your model, but someone can utilize it and still say that they can keep their weights. So it's like you're keeping the privacy of the data and the model, but then everyone is getting benefited of that. And these things are now especially in highlight because of the data breaches from Facebook, and then also a lot of data going to Google. So there are a lot of initiatives in this side from Silicon Valley. So why not we can take that initiative as well in the country, that we decentralize the data, we democratize the data and the models, at least among us. We start doing that.
So everyone heard Urban's battle cry. It's on video as well from ABSA. Maybe you guys
He's got a disclaimer, I'm sure.
I think he denies his personal capacity. It's just not he's not a financial advisor. He's not legal advice. But maybe you guys could publish some weights on some models. I think that's a great idea. So like throw away the data, just publish the model. I think that's a really good idea.
It's irrespective of, to be very true, if you are in any financial institute or if you're in, if you're the big organization and if you have the data, but you have so much of hierarchy and you have so much of access to it that by the time you get to the data, you leave the organization.
Yeah.
So the problem is sitting there. It's not that you're getting benefited, you're doing all the interesting stuff you want to do. You are struggling there. So it has to come from a community. Because bank was always traditional. All these organizations were always traditional. Now to tell them what to do, they're not going to take this from you.
Yeah, so don't really select at all.
Exactly. So start that community folks that they kind of revolutionize everything the way we have been doing, and then they will follow it. They will follow us.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I suppose if you think about it, like it would be better for everyone if every bank released their models and you could each create an ensemble of all of them that would be better than all of them. Well, I guess if you were the one that was better than everyone, you wouldn't like that. Okay. I understand you have to run. Maybe let's thank the panelists. I'm trying to decide. I don't know if anyone wants to go along. We have a bar tab at the UCT club. It's not infinite, so you might have to pay for your drinks and stuff. We could just head there, or we can carry on longer. I think it's been a long day. Yeah. I'd probably suggest let's just head there if you're okay with that.
I agree. We can
yeah, so with that, thanks everyone for coming. We're just going to head to the UCT club by the fields, and yeah, we'll see you there.